This is the Weigh-In Podcast by Ben Watt Chestnut and the occasional hop-in Sebastian Romero. On this week's Weigh-In, I'm not surprised that I got it this way. I got the elusifying. Well, I got tons of questions about this Ryder Princeton and the headgear thing. So everybody wants me to weigh in on how I feel about that Ryder Princeton and the headgear. So that is this week's Takedown Thursdays, because that's very well going to be a long episode, because it is the long debate of college wrestling. Should there or should there not be headgears? So with that being said, that is this week's weigh-in. So if we jump right into this one, we jump right into it. First and foremost, this is a classic. This is a classic situation of very well, hey, Princeton's only complaining about it because it happened to them. Watch, it's always going to be that way. This is the case of, if all of you remember, when before NFL changed their overtime rules and playoffs, it was Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. Josh Allen complained after the game that we still should have got a chance to have the ball, something along those lines, Then the NFL said it is what it is. It wasn't brought up again till then. Patrick Mahomes lost to Joe Burrow in a similar fashion. And then it was like something along those lines. I don't think that's 100% correct to a T, but it's kind of in that manifest that Prince is complaining because of what happened. But you hate to see a dual meet decided on a team point deduction. And I get what you're saying, because let's break this down really why I got to that. First of all, the match result was Ryder 20, Princeton 19. So you look at where that team point came. I got it here. Now it was at 157. 157. So let's pull it up and see that 157. So it was Rocco Camelucci over Gianna Madano, 4-1. And the reason why this isn't the question, because Rocco dropped his headgear, and that's what caused the unsportsmanlike penalty. So Rocco dropped his headgear, and if the headgear hits the ground, you take a team point, and that's what caused the team point loss. And it made the difference in the dual meet, because you look at the way everything went, it would have been all tied up 20-20, and it would have made the dual meet a lot more interesting. But in most cases, the team point was taken away. Just a real bad situation. According to that, nobody wants that to happen in any way, shape, or form. Nobody wants to have that happen. And it just kind of, it opened up a lot of people to say, should there or shouldn't there be headgears? And my official opinion on that is it should be optional. It should be optional. That's what I think. Like, do it like international wrestling. You want to wear headgear, you can. If you don't, you don't. It should more be an optional situation. I get you're trying to protect a lot of these wrestlers from possible concussions and getting cauliflower and all of what may happen. But at the same time, it's like, all right, a dual meet was very well decided on a team point. It really was a situation. And, for those that might not have saw it, he took his headgear off and he threw it to the ground. And when he did that, that's when they took the team point. And what the debate is over is, well, really he was halfway off the mat. it was a coach that didn't get it. That's not, you know, that shouldn't be on they shouldn't have been docked. But and what we found out, this is from some of the group chats I'm in. They say that Princeton would have won the duel on criteria, so it was a dual meet deciding point docket here. You just hate to see it. You hate to see it. You really do hate to see situations like that. You hate to see situations like that in any case. You don't like to see that in any situation. But I definitely think the long debate of headgear has gone across the long debate of having facial hair and all of that stuff that has gone with college wrestling. I think it's a really interesting situation, no matter how you draw it for college wrestling. And it just really is one that you don't like it. I don't like it. I think time and time high school coaches, college coaches, any coach of all levels say you never put the match, game, event, tournament in the hands of an official. And I get where Princeton's saying, hey, it was me as a coach that missed the grab to get that headgear. But at the same time, we all know we all know it's a rule. It happened to, don't quote me on this, but I believe it happened to Roman Bravo Young. He lost a team point for taking his headgear off. It's possible. And this isn't something new. And it's kind of, you got to keep your head. The same thing when AJ Ferrari got ready during Nationals. He got ready to slam his headgear, and John Smith ran up and said, no, 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 no. They're going to take a team point for that. He gets the win, and he chucks his headgear, and they took a point. It doesn't get more simpler than that, that should have never happened. You got to, but in terms of, like they say, the long hold rule of getting rid of headgears, I think it should be optional. I think because you give both sides what they want. You make it optional. You say, hey, that's up to the athlete, like the NFL does with the Guardian cap. They did not require, I think that's what you call it, the Guardian cap. I think that's what you call it. Yeah, that's what you call it, the Guardian cap. The Guardian cap. I think you long behold look at that and you say, okay, the Guardian cap. You long behold look at that and you use that similar rule in that fashion, that it's like headgears are optional. If for some of you that don't know, college has these elusifying rules that you're supposed to go live with the headgear in the rule book. That they don't really, that it's just like the long behold rule of these headgears is something interesting. And the fact that Princeton lost a team point over it and it cost them the dual meet. But at the same time, you got to look at it both sides, where they're going to be people saying, hey, that's a violation. You cannot take your headgears off. You have to reiterate this one all the way around, that you can't take your headgear off. But you hate to see a situation like that, because you look at it both ways. If the ref didn't call it, you would have looked at a rider team that would have said, hey, well, hold on. He just threw his headgear off. That's a team point. And then they would have been complaining, oh, ref didn't take a team point when he threw his headgear. So it's just one of those things where you just gotta, you can't do it. But I kind of feel, to my opinion, it should be an optional thing. It should really be optional. It should be really optional. It should be more of an optional thing, where it's like, it's strongly encouraged and suggested, but it's not required. It should be one of those things. That's how I feel. Yep. It was Roman Bravo Young in 2019. He spiked his headgear and he lost the team point. That, you've seen it happen before. They're going to call it. You can't do it. Even if it is a miss, the coach missed it and anything like that. you got to hold on to it. You just can't. They're going to take a team point from it. They do it all the time. It's just one of those things where you look at that and you say it shouldn't happen. But in the long-standing debate of should not be headgears, I think it should be optional. I think it should be optional. You should say it's an optional thing, like the Guardian cap. Because at the same time, yeah, it's nice. Yeah, some of them look real cool in college when they got the graphics all over them, look real good, and you got the colors and all of that, and it's a great thing. But I kind of think you got to make it optional at this point. A dual meet was decided over this, which is absolutely crazy. A dual meet was decided over that fact. I think it's fairly an interesting thing that a dual meet was on that. I guess it's kind of one of those. It's kind of one of those things you say it shouldn't have happened, but at the same time, there's not much you can do. Um, there's not much you can do in terms of that. That you can't do it, and you just have to as a coaching staff, you have to say no, 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 no. Keep that headgear on. And that's something that a lot of people talk about. Even NJ.com's got it covered. And this is why upon like really looking at this, I can see why Princeton said what they said, because I can see why a lot of people, basically everybody's calling it controversial. And that's because he didn't really spike it. Like in most cases, you see it inside the circle, a spike of the headgear or a drop of the headgear. It was more or less, to me, it kind of felt like he was throwing it at the coaches, like what Princeton said. He was throwing it at the coaches and coach missed. And it wasn't intentional, but just one of those things that is fairly interesting that came. And it's just one of those things where, yeah, he's emotionally dropped his headgear, but I look at it both ways, either way, where you look at this and you say, wow, you don't really want something like that to happen. Um, More than most, you don't want a situation like that to ever have to come into play. And I think that's about as that's about as close quartered, clear cut as it can get. For those who don't understand, you don't want a dual meet decided on. Uh, you don't want a dual meet decided on a headgear deduction, because it's re- it's ridiculous, but it's not ridiculous because you kind of did it to himself, but not ridiculous. This is like the long-standing debate when Hands to the Face came out, and everybody was like, "Oh my God, if you get a hands to the face in overtime, that's it, dual meet's over." And everybody kind of felt, well, you shouldn't really give up a point to that match. Shouldn't be over. It's the same thing, you know. You gotta kind of put yourself in the right situations, and I don't say you gotta control the emotions because it's a good win, but one of those things you say you gotta keep the headgear on. You gotta. If not, you gotta keep it in. You gotta keep it in your hands. For something like that to have taken place, it's just really one of those things where it's like you absolutely hate to see it. You hate to see something like that, and you hate to see it because it cost them the dual meet. And in a closed dual meet like that, to win on criteria, if you didn't see the dual meet, that's a good dual meet. Go watch it. That's a good dual meet. I would say that was a great dual meet. To have a score like that came out very close. That's a really close duel meet, and that's a good one. To have a 2019 where that one point Princeton would have won on criteria, and Ryder would have lost, but instead Princeton tossed the headgear, and 20-19, Ryder wins it. It's just stuff like that you wish that the matches never came down to the hands of the official. You know, you never want an official to come down and call a match, but it was a dual meet deciding team point doc. You can't make this stuff up, and I really feel for the situations of Princeton there that you had the dual meet in your hand to the point where you were going to win that dual meet, and then you decide, well, I mean, not like they decided, you know, you drop the headgear and all of a sudden it changes the whole perplexion of the match. It really changes everything, and that just you hate to see it. You hate to see something like that happen. You drop the headgear, and the whole perplexion of the match is like literally changed in the matter of a second, and it's one of those things that I'm kind of like, you hate to see a ref have to get involved in that, and you kind of say, where's the ease here? You know, that it was a good win. He was off. He wasn't center circle. You know, it just was a drop more than it was a spike. It's just so many particulars. But if you're Ryder, that's not the way you want to win. You know, if you ask me, that's not the way you'd want to win. But at the same time, it happened at 157. And when you look at it, let's kind of break it down for you. So at 125, they had Tyler Kinsley. I think that's how you say it. Tyler Kinsley. He won with a tech fall over Dale Obaya. You had Will Beatoncourt win by forfeit. So you talk about this. Okay, first of all, Princeton, what happened at 133? Why was there no 133? So that's one thing you talk about. But he wins by forfeit. I don't know exactly what forfeit because I didn't. I'll be honest with you. I didn't really look at the dual meet myself, so I'm telling you to look at it. As will I see what went down as well. I didn't watch this beforehand because it was a lot of questions. But what I did watch was that match, that 157. I watched that specifically. I didn't watch everything, but I watched that 157. So you talk about 141. Princeton got the Vic over Elijah Griffin. Elijah Rivera. Princeton got the Vic over Dylan Lendon. And then you had that 157, Rocco Camaluccio got the victory over Gianni Maldonado. And then you had Ty Whalen get the victory over Brendan Aldun. 174, you had Princeton get the victory over Riders Enrique Monguia. You had Xavier Giles of Princeton get the victory over that. And here's where Ryder made their comebacks. You had Brock Zerwowski get a fall. You had Hogan Swensky over Connor, and then you had the team point. So when you look at the Ryder wins, you look at the bonus points, and that's why Ryder still was in this match. Would you look at this? Okay, if Princeton would have took heavyweight, you wouldn't have been in that situation. You talk about here, and here's where I'm gonna say it. You talk about the difference in a lot of these restaurants. I'd say it all the time. Bonus. Let's talk about where the bonus went. We got Ty Kinsley, tech fall, bonus, 133, forfeit. So let's see what happened at that 133. Let's see if they got a news report on what went down at that 133. So that is the interesting part take is that 133. So we're gonna see what happened there at that 133. See if we could figure that out. What happened at that 133? See if I could get that for you. But more than most, the merry than most. See if I could get that for you as I look for that. That is definitely something interesting. Definitely fairly very interesting. So let's see if I can get just that. Let's see if I can find that for you. But definitely in a situation that you never would expect to happen. You never expect something like that to go down. A real bad situation when a dual meet is decided on a literal team point because a headgear was chucked. You hate to see stuff like that where it's like, all right, hey, that was a dual meet because you chucked a headgear. That's one of those things where you hate to see it. You really do hate to see it, but I'm looking for a report to get us going. What went down. Everybody was kind of getting at that, and there were a lot of questions coming in with a lot of people talking to me about that. The hey, so everybody was trying to get at me for that one about what went down here, but the situation is really what kind of I just kind of think it's one of those situations where I like to have seen the rest stay out of it. This is this is what the rider coach admitted. He said, "A rule's a rule. I'll tell you what the rule says. If I take my headgear off and I toss it gently, that's a team point. That's how simple it is. If it leaves my possession, remember, I was on the rules committee. It was pretty blatant. I saw a kid, his headgear broke. He took it off because it was impeding his vision and slid it over to the coach, and it was a point. They can review it all day. I know a lot of high ended people in the NCAA, so I'll be talking to them as well. Princeton had no right being in the match in the first place." Oh man, I'm reading this from what the NJ.com report is. That's yeah. Ryder says it best. It's a point all day, every day. But it just you hate to see it. You really do. You just hate to see it. It's one of those things where you say you really hate to see it. You really do. It's one of those things where you just. This is like a little off topic. Can we talk about how good the Princeton singlets look? Those things look nice that they wore that night. Like I don't know if it's just me that likes that orange camo look. It's looking like 133 was just a forfeit, just a straight forfeit. But can we talk about how good those Princeton camo singlets look? Like that ain't bad. Camo Princeton singlet ain't bad. But nonetheless, Ryder did say it best. We hate to see it, but it's a point. If it leaves your possession, it's a point. And as much as everybody has been all overly zealous about it, we all hate that it had to happen. It's a point. It's a point. We all hate, but it's a point. Unfortunately, we hate it. We hate it, but it's a point. I don't slide one way or the other in that dual meet because obviously we all know that I'm a Okie State Cowboy fan over with them. So like I don't really care whether they win or lose the dual meet, but like I also hate to see a dual meet fall on the side of an official where the official has to make, a choice. I hate to see something like that, but at the same time, like it's kind of one of those things where it's like, hey, it's kind of like I said, you did it to yourself. You did it to yourself because should have never took it off. Should have never took it off. Should have never took it off. There's plenty of times, and even as a coaching staff, you gotta say, "Oh, keep that head, don't, don't spike that headgear." And how Du Boise says, "Is it a sight?" It's like I said in the beginning. If the roles were reversed, Du Boise would be sitting there saying, "Hey, it is what it is. Sorry." No matter what, you're always gonna have that. You're gonna have one that says it shouldn't have happened, and you're gonna have one that says, "Hey, it should." Hey, you don't like to win like that, but But it's the same thing like Ryder said, they should have never been in it. Well, I mean, as the NJ.com report was saying, I don't think that was the clear words of the head coach, but it's saying they should have never been in it to begin with. You should never let a dual meet get that close. But you gotta understand, it's a good Princeton team. You look at that Princeton coaching staff, it's really good. So let's see if we could see who's on that Princeton coaching staff. Let's look at this. You have Joe, I think it's Du Boise. You have head assistant Cody Brewer. You have Anthony Ashnall. You got Ryan Wolfie. I think that's how you say it, Ryan Wolfie. Like you can't tell me that isn't a good coaching staff. And then obviously whoever's at their RTC, they'll probably have a few assistants. They just don't. So oh yeah, we got them up here. They got them up here. Let's see. No, they don't really. This is just like support staff. It's not really much. But you got coaching staff, you got all of them in there. So you talk about that that's a good Princeton team and you got a good set of coaching staff, but you can't do things like that. You just can't. You can't. You can't. You can, and we talk about. Let's see where the coaches are. Where the coaches are from. Where do the coaches come from? So Joe DuBois or DuBois or however you say Joe head coach was wrestled for Indiana. Cody Brewer head assistant wrestled for. Let me see. Let's see. Cody Brewer wrestled at Oklahoma. Obviously, this next one I don't have to look up. Anthony Ashnault wrestled for Rutgers. I mean, that's just plain simple. We all know that. If you're from Jersey, you know that. And Ryan Wolfe wrestled at Ryder. So it's real crazy, real crazy. So you say you got a good coaching staff through there, and you hate to see something happen like that. Everybody's saying is it or shouldn't have been, because as far as I'm concerned, let me see if I could pull it up for you. Let me see. I'm gonna pull it up for you. I know we're drawing near the end of this epi, but let me pull this up for you. Do. Let's see. Do. Let me see if I can find this before we go ahead and end this epi. Before we go ahead and end this epi for you. So this is what I was looking to get for you. Let me see. So for the past 2 years, 25 and 26, Ryder has won it. So that is that. So with that being said, we're in the end of this epi here. Glad to bring us yet another epi. So like, comment, subscribe, share. This was an interesting one. I hope for many of you that gave me my opinion, although my opinion may have in this case been a little confusing because I'm in the middle. Headgear should be optional, but I also see where it's like, hey, I see both sides. I really can see both sides, but plain and simple, it's a rule. You might not have liked how controversial it was, but if the headgear leaves you, it's a rule. It really is. Like I said, my opinion the same. I hate to see it because you hate to see the ref get involved. I hated to see that the ref have to get involved. You don't want to win a match like that. So yeah, I know that doesn't quite give a clear opinion that it's like, oh, it's clear he didn't like it or I didn't like the call. I did like the call. It's the rules coming into this year. So to it, I don't like that it was called because it decided the match, but it has to be called. So if that gives you that. But with that being said, this is yet another episode on Takedown Thursdays. Weighing out. The way in where stories ignite.